Professor Austin here again. After teaching anatomy and physiology for many years, I've learned that success isn't just about how much you study, it's about how you study. I've shared my playbook with the explainer, and she's going to tell you what successful A&P students do differently.
Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're stepping right into the classroom for an encouraging, highly practical masterclass on optimizing your study time. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by a really dense, fast-paced class, well, you are in exactly the right place. We're drawing directly from the brilliant advice of Professor Austin. He's watched countless students navigate the intense gauntlet of accelerated anatomy and physiology courses. So we're going to break down exactly what separates the students who thrive from those who, frankly, struggle. And we're going to give you a really clear roadmap to follow. Okay, let's dive right into this. The foundation of everything we're going to discuss today rests on a really fascinating observation. Professor Austin notes that he has literally seen students spend 20 hours preparing for an exam and do incredibly poorly, while other students spend that exact same 20 hours and absolutely crush it. The core premise here is just so empowering. Success in an intensive course is not about your innate smarts. The difference isn't having a genius IQ. The difference is pure strategy. It's strictly about how you use those hours. To get you there, we're going to follow this syllabus for success. We'll start with the reality check, then shift into exposure versus learning. We'll cover spacing, not cramming, break down the 30-minute block, talk about balancing content, and wrap it all up with the consistency checklist. Let's get started. Section 1, the reality check, time commitment in accelerated classes. Before we can optimize our time, we really need to respect the sheer volume of the mountain we're climbing here. 33 to 44 hours. Let that sink in. That is essentially a full-time job on top of your actual life. But that's the daunting number of hours a successful student might actually need to devote to an 8-week accelerated course every single week. Why is that number so high? Well, because an accelerated course isn't just half the class, it's the exact same massive amount of content just crammed into half the time. If you're going to be spending 30+ hours a week doing something, you better make sure those hours are actually working for you, right? Section 2, exposure versus learning, the active recall shift. And this brilliantly illustrates the single biggest trap students fall into, confusing passive exposure with actual learning. It's the whole reason someone can study for 20 hours and still fail. They're trapped in this illusion of knowledge. See, passive exposure is just watching a lecture video, reading a chapter, or staring at a diagram. And yeah, those activities are necessary, sure, but they're only step 1. Active learning means physically closing the book, opening a blank sheet of paper, and writing out what you actually remember. It's drawing the muscles or labeling the bones without looking. Passive exposure feels really easy and safe, but active learning, that's where the real magic happens. Psychologists actually have a name for this process, and it's called active recall. By forcing your brain to retrieve information from memory without looking at the answer first, you are building actual, robust neural pathways. Now, I want to really emphasize something Professor Austin points out here. This process is going to feel much harder than just rereading your notes. And honestly, that is exactly the point. If it feels like a struggle, good. That struggle is like a spotlight, revealing exactly what you actually know versus what you only kind of think you know because the textbook was open in front of you. Every single time you retrieve information without looking, you're locking in that memory. Moving on to Section 3, spacing, not cramming, distributing study sessions. Look, we've all been there. 2 a.m., surviving on caffeine, sheer panic, and very little sleep to cram the night before a test. That might get you by in a standard intro class, but for an accelerated course, the amount of information is just way too vast. It simply doesn't work. Instead, you've got to think in hours and days. Study the new material today, review it again tonight, review it tomorrow, review it a few days later, and then finally test yourself before the exam. By distributing your review sessions out over multiple days, you're leveraging repeated exposure over time. And that cements knowledge so much better than one giant, exhausting, last-minute cram session ever could. Section 4, the 30-minute block, focus, and breaks. So human concentration definitely has its limits. Once your focus fades, your learning efficiency just drops right off a cliff. The ideal cycle is 25 to 30 minutes of pure, unbroken focus. That means no phone, no social media, no multitasking whatsoever, just you and the material. Then you take a mandatory short break. And to keep your brain actually refreshed during that time, do not just switch to scrolling on your phone. Actually scratch that, step away from the screen entirely. Stand up, stretch, do some deep breathing, or just grab a glass of water. Implementing this really simple 30-minute block cycle means you're going to learn way more in 4 of these focused little sessions than you ever would in 3 distracted, exhausting hours. Section 5. Balancing content, new topics versus past material. Now here's a hidden challenge in accelerated courses that trips up even the really good students. The new material, it literally never stops arriving. And meanwhile, the comprehensive final is just quietly sitting at the end of the term, accumulating absolutely everything. So to manage this crazy flow of info, you need a structured weekly tracking template. Your primary focus obviously has to be the current week's material, so if exam 2 is on bones, you focus on bones. But, and this is crucial, you must reserve a small, dedicated slice of your time to review older material, like histology or skin, just so it doesn't vanish from your memory. This habit of balancing the new stuff while keeping the old stuff alive pays massive dividends down the road. And finally, Section 6, the consistency checklist, overcoming setbacks. Let's get real for a second and talk about the emotional core of taking a course like this. It gets incredibly tough. Perfect schedules do not exist, and consistency is what really matters at the end of the day. Professor Austin notes that the students who make it to the finish line rarely have perfect study methods or, perfect lives. You're going to face days where your motivation is absolutely zero, or you get a quiz grade that just breaks your heart. But resilient students don't let one bad quiz convince them they're failures. They just look at a bad grade as a signal. It's just data telling them to tweak their approach, make an adjustment, and keep going. So the crucial point here is building that resilience. And you do that by asking yourself these really simple daily questions. Did you show up today? Did you study even though your motivation was dragging? Did you adjust your strategy after a bad quiz instead of just throwing in the towel? Did you keep moving forward week after week? Because guys, this is the ultimate secret of the professor's playbook. The people who pass these brutal courses are not always the ones with the highest IQs. They are the ones who check these boxes, who show up, and who do the work. Consistency beats a genius IQ every single time. And that is a strategy every one of us can completely control. So we've covered the harsh reality of the time commitment, the sheer power of active recall, the absolute necessity of spacing out your study sessions, the efficiency of the 30-minute block, and of course, the undeniable power of consistency. You now have the complete playbook straight from the professor's desk. The only thing left to do is actually implement it. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to carry with you. You have the playbook. How are you going to use your very next 30 minutes?